Welcome, everyone. I'm Casey, and we're joined by our Executive Director and CEO, Christine, as well as David Von Hofen, our Director of Programs. Emily, our fourth and mighty team member, is out sick today. We are so excited about this special webinar program, and just not even a few months ago, Brad had approached us with this idea of air travel with Parkinson's, and he put a lot of time and effort into it. And Karen, his wife, has been a wonderful team member and co-leader. So we're just thrilled and really grateful for their time and dedication. So I am going to hand it off. We're going to take off here to Karen and Brad Penrod, and they'll be making their own introductions, and they'll also explain the format of the program. At the end of each section, there will be time to ask questions. So that's a time in which you can unmute yourselves, or you can use the chat box. So I would like to welcome everyone and hand it over to the co-pilots.
Thanks, Casey.
Thanks,
You're welcome.
Casey. So we're going to get started. We're going to share our screen. And
all fine.
Okay.
On the host. On the host.
Advanced. All right. So we can get started.
Yep.
Yep.
Good
Okay.
to go. Good to go.
You good?
Yep.
All right, we're going to get started. As Casey said, we're Brad and Karen Penrod. Brad volunteered to do this presentation because of his extensive background in airport management, his diagnosis of Parkinson's disease, and his love of travel. Brad did all the research for this presentation, including the development of this PowerPoint. And I'm his wife. I'm just a helpful voice. Parkinson's disease affects everyone differently, as you all know. In Brad's case, his voice is most affected. To that point, you may follow along with the slides. Brad served for 8 years as the CEO, Executive Director of Allegheny County Airport Authority. He was responsible for both Pittsburgh International and the Allegheny County airports. And before that, he held the position of Chief Operating Officer for the authority for over 8 years. Brad started his 34-year airport management career in Pittsburgh as a college intern while a student at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida. He has a master's degree in Duquesne University, at Duquesne. He served on the FAA Tarmac Delay Task Force, which focused on flight delays and the impact of those delays on passengers with disabilities. He oversaw airport activities for 2 disabled veteran Olympics. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's in March of 2015. Me, I'm his wife, and I have over 30 years of nursing experience, including various inpatient and outpatient areas. I'm currently an adjunct faculty member at a nursing program here in the Pittsburgh area at a technical college. Since Brad's diagnosis in 2015, we've traveled to Hawaii, Key West, Ponte Vedra, Alaska, New York City, San Francisco, Boston, Montana, and the Canadian Maritime Islands and Tulsa. And some of those we've traveled to multiple times. So I'm going to give you a summary of today's presentation. Let's call it our flight plan. We're going to start out with passenger rights and rules. I'm going to give you a general overview of the law governing the rights of disabled passengers and the industry training related to specifically movement disorders. Then the second segment of our flight plan is pre-flight, and we're going to talk about preparation for your trip, including picking your flights, your seats, some packing tips, along with some suggestions on how to expedite the screening process. And then the third segment is the day of flight. We're going to talk about recommendations for planning your day of travel, parking and passenger services available to you at the 2 commercial service airports in southwestern Pennsylvania. And then we're going to talk, our final segment is in-flight and arrival. And we'll talk about considerations on what to wear. The timing of your Parkinson's meds will also be reviewed. So please feel free to ask any questions that you may have, and you can put them in the chat box, and we'll address them at the end of each segment of our flight plan. So welcome aboard. So first off, we're going to talk about passengers' rights and rules. No doubt, everyone has heard of the Americans with Disability Act, or also known as the ADA. It came to be in 1990, and this law prohibits discrimination and guarantees people with disabilities to have the same opportunities as everyone else, including government programs and services and transportation other than commercial airlines, such as bus systems and subways. It was really not intended to address specific needs of air passengers, but it did address many issues related to airport terminal facilities. The other law, you're not as familiar with, is called the Air Carrier Access Act of 1986. This was created to address specific issues unique to the airline industry.
The Air Carrier Access Act. It's why we're here today. It's litigated some past Congress because of the inconsistent way of disabled passengers were being treated by the industry at the time. And it's addressed to the conflicting ideas of what it thought to be the critical resolution between the industry and disabled community. It's the law of the land. 14 CFR Part 382, non-discrimination on the basis of distance and passenger travel is what this full title is. The last updated May of 2016, for the 10th time since it was originally enactment. So it's the 10 times since 86. You can see it's a living document. Most recent update clarified issues related to the airline service, and terminal, and identified related parties responsible to ensure compliance with ADA standards and address issues with service animals. The ACA Advisory Committee's members include disabled community, airlines, airports, aircraft manufacturers, FAA, and TSA representatives. Last 2020, with the expectation to have new proposal language for the NPRM for this proposal making process by the next year.
The Air Carrier Access Act is a living law. It gets updated and changed as needed. And now I'm going to give you some highlights of that law. It allows for pre-boarding for a disabled person to self-identify themselves so you can so that you can board before others. It prohibits carriers from asking what your disability is. They cannot ask you what your disability is. You can offer that you have Parkinson's, but they should never ask you what your disability is. It also provides adjoining seating for travel companions. So what that means is if you fly on an airline that doesn't have pre-assigned seating, you, as the disabled passenger, your companion must be seated next to you. So this is where that comes from. This law also requires priority handling of mobility devices when stowing and returning the device to passengers. It allows checked or carry-on mobility device not to be counted towards your total bag count. So therefore, you can't be charged for that mobility device because it's not counted towards your total bag count. It's not counted as a bag. It requires airlines to have a complaints resolution officer available in person or on the phone. It requires carriers to provide training on disability accommodations for all personnel who deal with traveling public. It requires inter-terminal shuttles and people movers to be wheelchair accessible. And this law is applicable to all U.S. flag carriers and all foreign carriers that land or take off from the United States. The Department of Transportation has a disability hotline, and we have the 1-800 number listed right there. It's a great source of information, and they also have a website also. They have couple brochures that would be real interesting to read if you're traveling when you're disabled. They have one titled Accessible Travel, Wheelchair Assistance Tips, and Accessible Seating Accommodations. Lots of great information. With the research that Brad has done, it is evident that across the board, there is no specific training for movement disorders. So the TSA employees, the airlines, the travel agents, and airports, there is no training related specifically to movement disorders, such as Parkinson's disease. However, the TSA has a specific program called TSA Cares Program.
TSA Cares Program has 16 medical conditions that they train on and cover. Trainers really focus on communicating with the passengers, disabled passengers. TSA had advantage standing up to the organization after 9/11. They were created post ADA, post ACAA, so they had to comply with both of those laws. This is a screenshot of the list of the topics that they train on and have covered.
So the TSA does have a quite extensive list of medical conditions that they train about.
Including mobility devices needs. This is TSA notification card. You can go online and print out and fill in Parkinson's. You show that to the TSA officer when you go to the screening. Inform an officer you're willing to still walk or stand. You may be asked to stand with your hands over your head for a short period of time when you go through screening. Stand in the screening line and check include the same technologies. Maybe asked to be screened by advanced technologies, advanced imaging technologies, medical techniques like pat down. Aids must undergo X-ray screening or when inspected by TSA. Wheelchairs and scooters will be screened by TSA using various methods.
So the TSA on their website, you can print out this little card and write down Parkinson's disease, and you can show it to the TSA employee as you go through the checkpoint. Remember, they cannot ask you what your disability is, but you can share it if you want to.
Airlines have most have no specific training on movement disorders, but they work closely with airports, tour operators, and travel agents. Work frequently with local organizations and chapters if they're in demand. Focus on communicating with the passengers, with the travel companions, and ask them to communicate how they can communicate how they can best with customer needs. And follow the lead program for the DOT.
So the airlines follow a program called the LEAD program.
Which is listen, engage, assist, accompany, answer, and double check. Pretty straightforward, but it's really easy. Some additional training they get on disabled passengers is how to stow wheelchairs, and how to explain the seating accommodations. I mentioned before with the LEAD program how to engage and approach passengers with disabilities. That's one of the basic training programs that they have. This is a list of videos they have. Proactive ways to approach assisting passengers with disability is key.
Travel agents, they really get no special training on movement disorders either, but they work closely with the airlines and tour operators to identify any needs that you may have. They're a great source for giving you the information about seating configuration. And they also can plan to have a wheelchair or mobility device at your destination. So we've used that service. Our travel agent had made arrangements so that Brad's wheelchair would be right there on the ship in our room when we arrived, and it worked out beautifully. And then when we departed our ship, we just left the wheelchair in the room and they took care of it. The company we used was Special Needs at Sea, but there's several others, and our travel agent made all the arrangements for us, and that makes it very easy and very nice. Airport employees get no special training on movement disorders, but they work closely with the airlines to identify any needs that you may have. Airports must comply with the ADA building design standards or they'll risk losing federal funding. A grant application or the acceptance of grant money commits the airport systems allow that they follow all ADA and ACAA, the Air Carrier Access Act requirements and programs. And they have regularly scheduled 3-day audit teams that come out, 4 to 6 staff members from the FAA Office of Civil Rights, and they inspect the airport to make sure everything complies. So that concludes the first segment of our flight plan, passenger rights and rules. Are there any questions up to this point? We're good?
Any questions? You're welcome to, I know we mentioned the chat function, which you can use, or you're welcome to unmute yourself.
What was that phone number that you gave at the beginning? I went to grab a sheet of paper and missed it.
Sure. The Department of Transportation's phone number, the disability hotline, is 1-800-778-4838. Again, 1-800-778-4838.
And that was for the disability hotline?
Yep. The Department of Transportation Disability Hotline.
Okay, so that's just a call and ask questions.
Correct.
Yeah, we flew out of Pittsburgh, which was fantastic. We went to Texas, but I'll tell you, when we got to the Houston airport in Texas, it was a nightmare. I mean, they about dropped him coming out of the plane. They moved us from one person to another. How do you get that continuity between airlines? Pittsburgh was fantastic.
I think, well, a fun experience I had in Dallas. We were transferring to Dallas, coming back from top. And they didn't have a door they waited on me, so we had to run. Literally had to run to catch a flight to change the gate. It was an adventure. But I think on the continuity, a lot of times, if you're changing buildings or airlines, the airline that got you there has to take care of the primary responsibility for you. So if you switch airplanes, switch airlines, that would be the issue there. But other than maybe telling me you have to stay with me. I don't know that just make them aware of the problem they had so that they don't do it again. Because the airlines are taken very seriously and they contract all the service out for the most part. So they take up, I've seen airlines suspend service agreements with vendors if there are enough complaints about them. But at that DOT hotline also, you can file a complaint there too.
Yep, you can file a complaint there.
And I did include the disability hotline phone number as well as the web address in the chat.
Good.
And I know there was a question about can the material be made available in print app?
Sure.
Yes.
I'll email everyone the presentation.
Awesome.
And then where do you get the notification card?
Online, tsa.gov.
Yep.
tsa.gov. Okay.
It's right there.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay.
My name is Larry. I had a question.
Sure.
Is there any way to avoid long lines through security by showing them you have a disability? Was there like a separate line or anything?
In Pittsburgh, I'll speak in Pittsburgh extremely well. Typically, the wheelchairs will go through the first class line, or
First class.
Typically, or they come to the pre-check line, and then it was given priority to boarding. So they just go right to the front line and take you. Usually, as long as sorry.
If you get in the priority line, then that'll enable you to not have to stand in line as long as far as going through security.
Correct.
And also, if you needed assistance for a long walk, is that where you would get a wheelchair or something?
You get a wheelchair to the ticket counter when you check in.
You get it where?
At the ticket counter when you check in.
Oh, I see.
At the ticket counter.
That's what all wheelchair. There's two vendors in Pittsburgh who provide wheelchair chairs to the airlines. And they're both based in the ticket counters. And it's a matter of minutes.
So when you check in with your luggage, you can do that
Yes.
And then as far as security, you can go through the priority line
Yep.
in less than the amount of time you have to
Yep.
stand in line.
Correct.
Thank you.
And in Pittsburgh, they'll even come, I just found this phone number when we flew. They actually came to the parking lot. All I had to do was call when I got to the parking lot. They came there, they took the luggage, and they put my husband in a wheelchair and took us to the ticket counter. And from there, they took us to the gate. So
That's awesome.
yeah, I had a hard time finding that number and finally got back through up there.
Good deal.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
Do you happen to have the phone number?
I will look forward and try to put it on this chat.
Okay.
Great.
Can talk afterwards.
Great.
There is an additional question. If you're not using a wheelchair, how can you ask for pre-boarding?
Tell the gate attendant that you have this Parkinson's and the rest of the time.
You just share that you have
Yeah.
Parkinson's?
Yeah,
Yes.
and they'll say yes.
Okay. And if you're not comfortable sharing your specific
They don't have
disability, you
have
don't
to.
have
Say,
to.
you know,
Okay.
what time,
Right.
a little slow today.
Mhm.
They'll say, okay, stay here. Don't stay away from the gate though. Because they're asked that. They don't review too many times.
Okay. If you don't mind just sharing that last part, Karen. It was just
Yeah, just go to the ticket counter when you get there, self-identify yourself to the ticket counter and tell them that you just need a little extra time boarding today because you don't have to give a reason. You don't have to say that you have Parkinson's. Just tell them that. And most likely they're going to give you access early.
Yeah.
Because they know you don't have to say why.
okay. And David did include the copy of the presentation in the chat.
Great.
I will also email it to everyone afterwards. Okay, any additional questions, or shall we move on to the next part of the plan?
Okay.
Okay.
We'll just move on. Our next segment of our flight plan is called pre-flight. So before you go on your trip, you have to pick your flights. We recommend picking early in the day. This avoids and minimizes problems associated with weather, such as winter snowstorms and de-icing, summer thunderstorms. Always try to sit as close to the front of the plane that you can afford. Sitting in the front of the plane makes it easier to get to and from. And also consider an aisle seat. That makes it easy, close proximity to an aircraft restroom if you need to use the restroom. Also, consider the time of year you're flying and the airline route structure. So what I mean by that is, let's say if you were flying to Hawaii for New Year's and you're flying American Airlines, would you go through Chicago or would you go through Dallas-Fort Worth? Being that it's late December, winter, possible snowstorm, you would most likely want to pick flying through Dallas-Fort Worth to avoid those possibilities. Or let's say you're going to Florida for a long weekend, leaving on a Friday afternoon. Would you fly, say you're flying American Airlines, would you fly through Washington National or through Charlotte? So if you think about it, Friday afternoon, all the business travelers coming to and from home, Washington National would really be busy on a Friday afternoon. So you most likely would want to pick Charlotte. Or you might want to not pick either one of those and take a nonstop flight through Southwest with no connections. So you have to think about the time of year and where you're flying through, the route structure and all that when you're picking your flights. Also, consider the general seating configurations. Airplane seats aren't like they used to be. They've really changed. They've gotten smaller and tighter. So each airline has different seat configurations, such as Delta has Delta First Class, Delta Comfort, and Delta Main Cabin. All these seats are different sizes and different leg rooms. Allegiant has Allegiant Legroom Plus and Giant seats. Again, they're all different sizes and configurations. So you can find that information out from your travel agent or online at the website for the airline, and that you can see what the sizes are for the seats, because it's very, very difficult nowadays. The seats are much smaller. So you might want to take a look at that when you're planning your trip. Okay.
picking flights. Out of Pittsburgh, there's 60 nonstop destinations you can choose to from for Pittsburgh on 89 daily flights. Average flight duration is 134 minutes, which is important when you're taking time in meds for Parkinson's patients. 134 minutes is almost the max for the time I get on those meds. So take that into consideration when you're timing your meds. Peak departure times in Pittsburgh are 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. So if you want the early morning flights are also the biggest time of the day. Pittsburgh has Western Pennsylvania as a whole has an excellent mix of traditional and low-cost carriers and also low-cost carriers. See from this list.
We have lots to pick from here.
Another one that's announced last week, I think Breeze is coming next month. Another low-cost carrier.
Right, another low-cost carrier coming called Breeze to Pittsburgh in a couple months.
You can't forget our friends at Latrobe Airport with Spirit Airline has 5 to 6 nonstop destinations with 4 daily nonstops out of Latrobe with an average flight length time of 145 minutes. Nice thing about Latrobe is also it's only one carrier, but you get free parking. So Spirit says we're going to go take advantage of the free parking.
So don't forget about Latrobe. It's a gem of an airport. It's really nice to fly out of, and they have free parking. So plan your travels carefully. We recommend expedited screening. That gentleman that was asking about getting through the screening process quicker. We recommend expedited screening with the TSA PreCheck program. It's $85. It's for 5 years, and that allows you to travel domestically. And typically you don't have to remove your shoes, your laptops, your 311 liquids, your belts and light jackets. If you're traveling internationally, we would recommend the Customs and Border Protection Global Entry program. And that's $100 for 5 years. That includes both domestic and international travel. It gives you the same benefits as the TSA PreCheck, but it includes that international travel. Brad has cleared customs and immigrations in Chicago O'Hare midday in less than 5 minutes with this program. So it really expedites the process through the screening. Don't forget about the Real ID. The Real ID was to be effective later this year in October. However, they bumped it and they moved it to May of 2023. So you won't be able to travel without a Real ID unless you have a passport, and your passport has to be up to date. So keep those, keep that in mind. Also, remember to plan out your day of travel medications. Keep that in mind, plot them out, because of the day of travel. It could be very long and grueling. And so you want to plot those out and have it all pre-planned. It really helps and makes it simpler for you as you travel. If you're thinking about getting the TSA PreCheck or the Custom Border Protection Global Entry program, if you want to apply for that, Pittsburgh International has a center that an enrollment center, and you can apply there, and it's located on ticket level of the airport. All this for you as a Parkinson's passenger. This gives you less hassle, less workload. It lessens the number of documents you have to keep track of, and it makes it easier to handle your documents. Oops.
So you want to plan your travels carefully. How do you pick your carrier? By price, by limited program points, by destination served, by schedule, by aircraft equivalent type, weather patterns, flight times, whatever.
So there's a lot to take into consideration when you're picking your flight.
Here's just 2 examples of route systems. Delta's on the left and United on the right. There's a layer 12 airline flights on top of that. The schedule gets complex, flexible.
So lots of flights, very complex to pick from.
Is there a phone number to call to get one of these TSA things for $85?
You have to do the enrollment center at Pittsburgh International.
You can fill the application out online, and then they'll schedule an appointment for you to come in and talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick a time. So it's pretty flexible timing wise.
At the airport, it's called the Enrollment Center. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
For FAA's Pack Safe program for passengers. There's a chart online that shows what you can and cannot pack. in these categories, and TSA has a prohibited item list in these categories. If you stick to these categories and lists, find what you can and cannot pack. Pretty straightforward.
It is. It's very straightforward. So when you pack, you got to follow both of these programs so you don't pack something that you shouldn't be packing. So in regards to packing, never put your medications in your check luggage. Never. Always keep it with you.
Ever.
Never.
Never, ever.
Never. You always want to have it with you in case there's an emergency on the flight, in the airport, on the tarmac. You just don't want to be without. As a Parkinson's patient, you know what it feels like when you miss a dose or delayed getting that next dose. You don't want to be that way in the middle of a travel day and not have your medications. Brad's participating in a study through the Cleveland Clinic. It is a study for patients with Parkinson's with using the Peloton bike as exercise. He's in it for a whole year, and he has to go back to Cleveland Clinic to get evaluated. But the evaluations are him without his Parkinson's meds for 12 hours. He's completely off for 12 hours. And it's very difficult for him to function. And just think how you would feel if you don't have your meds. So never put your meds in your check luggage. Always keep it with you all the time. Now, speaking about packing, Brad will give you some recommendations on how he packs.
My preference is to use a small backpack. You can use a cold carry-on too, if you want to. But I like a small backpack because it frees both hands up for balance issues, which is critical for hair balance issues. But in a small backpack, I can fit my medications, enough for exercise, less of medications, travel documents, reading material, electronics and related cables. This case is my 2 trekking poles, which fold nicely behind an iPad, my laptop, snacks, changing clothes, spare pair of glasses, handkerchief and tissues if you drool, which I have been doing, and shielded disposable briefs fit nicely in a backpack.
Mm-hmm. He puts a lot in that backpack. It's really easy for him to manage. Also, I want to point out, if you subscribe to a product through your healthcare provider, such as MyChart, you can simply print a list of your medications right from the MyChart website. It makes it really easy for you. You don't have to type them out or write them out. You can just print them right from MyChart. I just wanted to point that out in regards to packing. So that concludes the second segment of our flight plan, pre-flight. Does anybody have any questions in regards to this segment?
I would make a comment. I am a co-host for a pilgrimage that was planned for last October to the Holy Land and had to be postponed. We're still deciding whether to go this year or not at this point. But in AARP magazine, they had an app that you download in Google Play Store called Mobile Passport App. And you have to only fill your passport information out within 4 hours of your flight time. So once you get to the airport, they recommend you do it. And then it's wiped out. It's not kept anywhere. And it's supposed to get you into the pre-check. And it's free. So that's Mobile Passport App. And I've downloaded it. Obviously I haven't tried, to use it yet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Casey or whoever put it in the chat for me.
Thank you, Norma.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
There were a few comments, excuse me. Always bring extra medicine. Always bring extra medicine with you, at least several.
Yes.
And try to avoid flying through Phoenix in the summer.
It's true.
That's true.
Yep. You can have a heat delay.
We spent 12 hours in Phoenix one time.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Any more questions right now? Okay.
Okay.
And it looks like one quick thing, the Pittsburgh Enrollment Center for
Mhm.
the TSA pre-check is it's open Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. and then 12 until 5 p.m. It's on the Pittsburgh Airport Level
Website.
3. I don't see a phone number, but just wanted to share that with you.
It looks like we have one question that occurs on some planes where sitting in the front of the plane makes the trip to the restroom very, very long. Does first class ever share with passengers with disabilities?
I've never seen it, but you could ask. But the typically like the carriers likes to take care of the first class passengers. But you can always ask.
You haven't seen that happen, but you can always
No.
ask.
Yeah. I know when we came back from last year, I was way up front, the coach, and it was a long walk back to the airplane.
Now, I know some of the airlines do have restrooms in the front.
Mhm.
Well, Southwest, they don't have first class, but that's a good question and something definitely to ask.
Yeah. And to consider depending on the length of the flight and what you're.
I don't think the passengers say anything to you, but the flight attendant might.
Yeah.
So if you address them earlier, so as soon as you get on the airplane, especially if you live really close to the front.
No, you can always ask.
Mhm.
Any more questions or comments? Thanks for catching that question, Christine. Okay,
All right.
we'll continue on our trip.
All
Where
right.
are we going, by the way?
Where do you want to go?
It's your choose a destination for
Yep,
us.
we're excited to go now that COVID restrictions are lifting. So we're looking forward to planning our next trip. So the next segment is titled Day of Flight. So with that being said, we always say get an early start. Adjust your meds if directed by your doctor. Get to the airport early. Allow for your Parkinson's time conversion factor. And what I mean by that is there's a time when you take your meds and then the time that your meds kick in and you feel more functional, more optimal. To keep that into consideration when you're traveling, because you want to feel your best when you're going through that airport. So take into consideration that time conversion. We always talk about a couple years ago, the Parkinson's Foundation of Western Pennsylvania had their annual conference, and Dave Parker, the former Pittsburgh Pirate, was there and he spoke. He has Parkinson's. It was a great speech. It was a great conference. And he made a joke about how there's the time he wakes up in the morning, and then there's the time he really wakes up in the morning, meaning the time when his meds kick in and he feels like he can do something and he can function. So keep that in mind when you're planning your day of travel, so that you want to feel that best when you're at that airport so that you can get through and get into the plane. Allow time now for COVID-19 protocols. They're lifting those up more and more as we progress, but there's still some protocols we have to follow. So make sure you allow time for that. Also, don't let time deadlines and pressures cause you anxiety. I know that if we're hurried or something stressful happens, Brad slows down even more. So we give ourselves some buffer time so that we're not so stressed, so that we don't have to worry about that deadline, the time deadlines. So give yourself time. Also, allow yourself time to pace your pre-flight activities. So pre-flight activities such as getting ahead of the crowd, time to get through the ticket counter and screening. And sometimes you might need assistance to get that wheelchair, and you have to wait for that person to come with that wheelchair. So allow time for that. Allow time to get a snack or a bottled water, and one last restroom call if you need it.
If you just completed your first adventure of the day, get from the home to the airport when you want to. Second adventure is parking your car. So parking your car on airport may be less expensive. Last week I think Pittsburgh announced $7 a day parking rate. Typically shuttle ride to Town Revenue. We're going to make reservations online at a discount rate. Parking lots patrolled by kind of police. But you have to drive around and look for a parking space. Right now it's not a problem, but when in the summer travel, it's going to be an issue. Versus off-airport parking, which may be more convenient. So we do it in our service. On the shuttle rides and tow burning, but the car's warmed up in the winter and cooled down in the summertime upon it. Now you just sit in and out of the car, but and you avoid the potential long line next to both.
We, for us, off airport parking seems to be better for us. It's a smoother process. We prefer it. They take us and our luggage all the way to the front door of the airport. We're together and we can go in and check in at the desk. Versus on airport parking, I usually have to drop Brad off at the front door with the luggage. Then I have to go out and find a parking spot and then go in and find Brad and then get our luggage and go to the checkpoint. So we prefer the off airport parking. Okay. And I clicked too many times. And also don't forget about another option instead of parking at the airport or off airport, think about ride sharing. There's Uber, Lyft, Super Shuttle Express, taxis, and PAP Bus. But with those, you have to really consider the timing and the dependability of them and the compatibility of the vehicle, their vehicle size and the luggage and mobility device that you're taking. Also, there's passenger services at the airport to help you. And we already discussed the TSA PreCheck and the Custom Border Protection Global Entry. They also have sky caps. Sky caps are great. Sky caps, upon arrival, verify with your airline that you need a wheelchair and that you need that wheelchair all the way to your destination and transferring flights, if not flying nonstop. Also, self-identify yourself to the gate agent when you get to your gate, and that gives you priority screening and boarding. And usually they let you on board before first class. Also, Pittsburgh International has family restrooms. The family restrooms are great if you need assistance, and they are located landside near the moving walkway and airside concourses C and D. Also, they have pet relief areas if you're traveling with a small pet, and that's located in Concourse D. And also the airport, Pittsburgh International has airport ambassadors, and they're adult volunteers who help passengers with needs, such as escorting, tasks, directions, whatever it may be. And those volunteers really are handy. They really help out. So that concludes our third segment of our flight plan. Does anyone have any further questions?
Looks like there are a few questions in the chat, which
Good.
we can cover first. Thank you, Joyce, for providing the number for the parking lot pickup.
Good.
It's in the chat. The number is 412-472-5854. 412-472-5854. And which off airport parking is best?
Well,
Do you have one that you prefer?
Yes, it's closed right now.
it's closed right now because of COVID.
Charlie Brown's been around for
Park
a long time.
anywhere if you have a placard, and they'll give you the cheapest rate. So you can park right there at the handicap, right off the terminal in short term. And if you have your handicap placard, then when you go to pay, when you're done for the week or wherever you're going, then you just go to a cash only lane and show them your placard, and they will give you the cheapest rate.
Yes. But it's still a shorter walk if you get off airport. Because there's right at the door.
Yeah.
Okay, you still have a walk.
Yeah, there's still a walk.
But that's really good to know. So if you do have a
Placard.
handicapped accessible placard sticker, you can park in the short term and you'll
Tough as
still
rock.
get
Tough
the
as
least
rock, yeah.
expensive rate.
Yep.
And then use the number that I supplied, and they'll come right there to get you, so you don't even have to walk the sidewalk.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any additional questions at the moment?
We're good.
Okay. Let's travel on.
Okay. So now we're going to talk about in-flight and arrival.
I'm critical of all this pharmaceutical timing. I like the new straight pockets of pillbox in during flights because it came to before the seats are what they used to be size-wise. And the small seats and the seatbelt on, it's difficult for me to get pillbox out of my bed front pocket. So I use the pillbox on the shared pocket. Especially if you tell 10 changes, 7 times changes, the doctor talk to the doctor. It's more critical to keep your meds on a regular schedule. So always have water with you to take your meds because cabin crew's not able to serve water when they want to or need to take your meds because those actually on for critical phase of flight approach and arrival. It's the most important part, two most dangerous parts of flight, are approaches and arrivals. You want to be on, so give you time to kick in. Don't wait till you're on short final or doors closed.
Right. We want to stress that point. Statistically, the two most dangerous phases of flight are right before departure and before arrival. So we recommend that your medications, you take them so that you're on, you're on your best. You're most functional during those times because those are the two most dangerous times of flight. I just want to tell another personal story. We went to Alaska a couple years ago and we flew to Alaska. We had a 7-hour layover in Minneapolis. That's a long layover. When we made the arrangements, the flight was not that, the layover was not that long, but this closer to the day of flight, the layover got longer and longer and longer. So we had a 7-hour layover in Minneapolis, which required Brad to plot out his medications very carefully. And we talked to our movement disorder specialist, and she helped us plot out that entire day because it was super long. The time zone change, the layover, it was a very super long travel day for him. It required him to take 2 to 3 extra doses, but he got through the day beautifully without a misbeat at all. But the help of our doctor, we were able to make that trip, and it was awesome. So in conclusion, make sure you know your rights.
Discuss travels with your doctor for any adjustments to medications.
Enroll in the TSA's PreCheck or the Custom Border Protection Global Entry Program.
Figure out non-stop flights to service if possible.
Pace yourself the day of travel and pay attention to your body's Parkinson's clock.
Arrive to airport early, confirm your official needs with airlines.
And self-introduce yourself to the gate agent so you can pre-board that aircraft.
Relax.
And enjoy your flight. Travel. Don't let Parkinson's disease take that away from you. And thank you for letting us do this presentation.
Thank
and
you.
now we'll take any further questions.
This is Larry. I just had one other question about seating. With the COVID, you want to obviously not be near the aisle and be further away from people going up and down. But now that we're hopefully just about post-COVID, sitting on the aisle would seem to be better in terms of if you're near the front of the plane as far as the restroom in the back, and even situation where you can't really sit too long without your leg stiffening up. Isn't it better to have an aisle seat so you can get up more easily and walk to the back of the plane and back and forth a little bit?
I think so.
Yes, that's what we recommend is the aisle seat.
Check out the vents, overhead vents in aircraft also. If you aim it right at you, it's blowing fresh air right at your face, so that helps too.
Right. So always try to get an aisle seat when possible, not a window.
That's what we recommend too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any suggestions on if your spouse cannot go to the bathroom by himself and he's on a plane? I've been in that restroom and it's not too good with 2 people in there.
Not room for 2.
There's no room
So,
for 2.
I mean, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, we always try to use the restroom prior to boarding, right before. So hopefully Brad doesn't have to use the restroom in flight. And that's what we try to do.
Yeah, I try that also, but
But depending on the length of the flight, it could be a problem.
yes, and I've been in that restroom for 2 and it just doesn't work out. And there isn't enough family restrooms at any of the airports.
Before the pandemic, when we traveled, my wife and I would try to get aisle seats across from each other.
Oh, yeah.
So I could help her
Mhm.
get out very quickly, because what they want to do is they want to sit you in the middle seat.
Mhm.
I don't like the middle seat at all.
Yeah. Brad doesn't like the middle seat.
Mm.
It's too tight for him. Mhm.
Are there any airlines left that still have a open middle seat because of COVID, or are they all back to using all their seats?
I think Delta's the last one that says it ended in May. I think the middle end of May. They're back to using middle seats now.
Mhm.
Is
That's
that
what I-
Southwest or Delta?
Delta.
Delta, it's all 3 seats now.
So as of now, all the airlines have using all their seats.
Yeah.
But they're still requiring masks at this
Right.
point.
Mm-hmm. Any last questions or anything else you'd like to share? Comment on? I will email everyone the presentation as well as a few notes. Gotten some nice thank yous. Very helpful.
I'd like to add a thank you if I could. Bill and I have traveled extensively and on airplanes, and we really thought we knew it all. Thank you both, Karen and Brad, because you know more, and also several of the contributors. Very, very
Yeah,
helpful.
very
Thanks.
helpful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you guys are great. Good team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is much more than just a nice voice.
Yeah, thank you, Karen and Brad, so very much for your time and dedication.
Thanks for having
and
us.
You're so welcome. And thank you to everyone that attended.
Mhm.
Safe
Thank you.
travels. I hope you are able to plan a trip in the near future. And we'll see you again soon.
And I would like to thank
Yes.
Karen and Brad also.
David.
It's, I think it's really special that Brad is doing this presentation.
Mhm.
Given his difficulty with speech, even though he's doing the speech therapy. I mean, I think this is really cool. And thank you guys. And Karen, thank you for being such a good team member. You guys did an awesome job.
Thank
you.
you.
Karen.
Thank you.
I can see
Thank you.
where this presentation would have wide appeal, not just locally in Western Pennsylvania, but across the country, because Brad, you're coming at it from a very different perspective than most people who would put information together about travel. I mean, you're
Mhm.
looking at it from the airport authority. So
Correct.
it's fabulous. We just can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone.
thank- Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you
Thanks, Casey.
soon.
See ya.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.